Everything on Hyperliquid starts with HyperCore, the brain of the network where trades happen. Then HyperEVM brings the EVM compatibility. And with QuickNode, you can tap into both real-time trades and on-chain states, all from a single endpoint. And if you want to learn more about HyperEVM and HyperCore and their differences even, check out the linked video in the info card above. Now, in this video, we will build a portfolio checker which fetches data from both the layers of Hyperliquid, all powered by QuickNode. So without any ado, let's jump into it. So this is the app where you can see the number of perps market, open number of spots market, active vaults, and then you can also do portfolio tracking for a particular wallet. For example, if you click on this wallet, you can get their open positions, their orders, all of it in one place, total account value, total positions value, unrealized P&L, margin used, etc. Then you can also get EVM data. For example, you can get block data. If you want to get, let's say, block number 270's data, you can search for it and you can get all the raw data for that particular block. Then let's say that you want to get for 250th block, you can get that information as well. You can also search by transaction hashes. For example, if you take this transaction hash from block 17630.250 and just placed the transaction hash and search for it, you will get the transaction body. So this is the EVM part, and the portfolio tracking you can see over here along with the perps market, spots market. All of this is the HyperCore part. So basically you can see that we are getting both HyperEVM along with HyperCore data from QuickNode. So it's very simple. Once you have your QuickNode account and you have created Hyperliquid mainnet endpoint in your QuickNode dashboard, this is how your endpoint will look like. It will have the URL where it will have a subdomain, and then it will have an authentication key. Then it will end with /EVM. So /EVM is the endpoint for your HyperEVM data. And if you want to access the HyperCore part, you can basically just replace that /EVM at the end of your endpoint with /info. And with this new endpoint ending with /info, you can call these HyperCore methods to get data about an account's HyperCore side. And for all the EVM methods, you can use all these Ethereum JSON RPC methods. So now let's look at the code. So the app is a Next.js app, and the entire code for this app will be linked in the description below, where what you will first have to do is you will have to do npm install, and then you will have to copy this .end.example file and replace example with local so that your file looks something like this, and replace this part with the QuickNode endpoint of your own. Get it from your QuickNode dashboard. Once you log in, create a new Hyperliquid endpoint, and once you have the Hyperliquid endpoint, go to overview section of the endpoint and copy it from here. And once you copy the endpoint, you will have to paste it here, and then just get rid of the /EVM part, because we handle EVM and HyperCore, which is HyperEVM and HyperCore request via this file, which is api.ts file. So you can see we have two sections, one each handling each type of request. So this will be for api.info, so that once api.info is called, /info will be called on the QuickNode endpoint. And once api.evm is called, /evm will be called on the QuickNode endpoint. And then there are some storage utilities in this file as well. Then comes the main page.tsx file, where we load these methods once the page is loaded. We call the meta, spot meta, liquidatable, vault summaries methods on the /info endpoint, which means the hypercode part. Then we have the basic sections, hero sections, the cards sections, which shows the stats, and then the features buttons. So basically, the header section, the stats section, and the features section. So that's what our main file does. So this is the main file. Then we have the CSS and layout over here. Then comes the portfolio tracking part, which first starts with validating an address, which starts with the address input component, where we first check if the input address is valid or not. Then we have few structures for that page. So basically this will be this page, where once you search for an address, you'll also get some data or the orders data for that particular address. So it handles the actions for the address inputted. And once the address is validated, then comes the main file for account, where we make API calls. So you can see we are making API calls for clearing house state, spot clearing house state, front-end open orders. So basically we get that data and we show that on the screen in a formatted way. So you can see that we have account value, total positions, unrealized PNL, margin use, all of that over here. And then after that we have the tabs for each, where there are tabs for positions, orders, and balances, which comes from here. And then there are each tabs over here: positions, orders, then balances. Then comes the EVM part, which comes from Explorer/EVM and then the main file. So in this, what we basically do is we first set the state for the current block. We get information for the current block, where we get the block number, and then there is a function to handle search. So if the enter string is above 66 characters, then call these. And if the enter string is an address, then call this, then decimal converter for the block number, and then basically the structure of the page. Then few other things are assets, where we call the meta method on the info endpoint and show the data like trading pairs, margins, etc. on page, which you can see over here. And then the spots page will call the spots meta and show information like index, number of tokens, pair names, all on the page. So this is how you can set up an app with one single endpoint to get data from both HyperEVM and HyperCore part. Now let's go to Hyperliquid Explorer and get a new address to look for. So let's take an example of this user. Let's get their portfolio. Let's check what their portfolio looks like. All right, so these are their stats. These are the positions open. These are the orders they have and their balances. So these are basically the token indexes, which you see over here. Now, if we want to look at the EVM part, let's say that this is the latest block. You can search for basically any block in the HyperEVM part. So let's say that we want to search for the block ending with 760. So we can search that. We can pick any transaction and search by transaction hash as well, and you'll get data about the transaction. So this is just the raw data, but you can format it nicely. You can convert it into more consumable format as well. So this is how you can basically get Hyperliquid's HyperEVM as well as HyperCore's data in one single application using one single endpoint, just by replacing your suffixes of your QuickNode endpoint with /EVM and /info for HyperEVM and HyperCore respectively. So hope you learned something from this video. The code for the application will be linked in the description below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.